for me personally, I've sort of had ebbs and flows in sort of the entrepreneurial spirit, you might say. So sometimes you build something up and it's been a big effort, and then I focused my energies on something a little bit different, you know. And so after I sold Elite, I helped Thomson Reuters on strategy. I spent time pursuing some of my other non-business related interests. I ended up my kids were in their early teenage years. I thought it was an important time to spend more time with them, so I
Mhm.
did that. But then after a while, I thought, okay, I've spent time doing those things. The spirit moved again, and I was ready to sort of start a new business, and was excited to do it again. And I think that's a nice, I had a tremendous opportunity there because it sort of refreshes you again. I'm able to go at it with a new excitement and enthusiasm, perhaps because I've let us recharge the batteries, you might say.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Features with Hello Advisor. This is a special content series where we invite founders and individuals that work in the startup world to share their stories and to hear from their experiences. Now, today we are joined by Alan Rich, founder and CEO of Y Meadows. How are you doing, Alan?
Doing great. Thanks, Alexis.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you here because, not only are you working on your current venture, but you have previously co-founded two other companies, Elite Information Groups and Chrome River Technologies, both of which you have seen who a successful exit. So you've definitely earned yourself the reputation of a fantastic serial entrepreneur, not something that many founders can say for themselves. So to start us off, for those listening that are maybe unfamiliar with your background and your extensive career as an entrepreneur, would you introduce yourself and sort of take us through how you got started to where you are now?
When I came out of graduate school, my father had a business in the office equipment business, and he also was an entrepreneur, you might say. And so I joined his business, and it was in the early stage of software companies starting to be developed. And so we decided to create a new software company together, which became an Elite Information Group, and we focused on building financial systems for law firms. We started off selling to the law firms in Southern California, and then grew that to become a national and then an international business. I sold that business, and ultimately it became part of Thomson Reuters. Stayed at Thomson Reuters for a few years on a sort of part-time basis. Then in 2007, a co-founder and I started Chrome River Technologies, which was focused on enterprise expense reporting. And our first customers were large law firms. It was an area that we were well familiar with. And eventually that grew to sell all kinds of companies. So we ended up selling, Toyota and Exxon and Liberty Mutual and Bosch and some of the great companies in the world, as well as, a lot of law firms and mid-sized companies as well. Chrome River was acquired by a private equity firm in 2019. In 2020, my two sons and I started Y Meadows. So it's a nice chance to sort of close that circle on having a family involved business. And but we run it like a regular, you know, tech company startup. And now we're focused on the world of AI automation and helping companies automate their customer service and order entry processes.
Wow. Thank you so much for condensing all of that into such a concise bio. But yeah, that's really cool that, entrepreneurship sort of started as a family business and still remains a family business
Yes.
today. And you're still adopting and responding to the new technologies that are emerging in the market and sort of working with those. So I think that's really awesome. I think a question that many people would have after hearing your story is, at what point did you decide that you wanted to do it all again? So your first venture with your father, Elite Information Groups, you saw that to exit. At what point did you decide that it was time to start another company after that?
It's a really good question.
Mhm.
I think that for me personally, I've sort of had ebbs and flows in sort of the entrepreneurial spirit, you might say. So sometimes you build something up and it's been a big effort, and then I focused my energies on something a little bit different, you know. And so after a sold Elite, I helped Thomson Reuters on strategy. I spent time pursuing some of my other non-business related interests. I ended up my kids were in their early teenage years. I thought it was an important time to spend more time with them. So
Hmm.
I did that. But then after a while, I thought, okay, I've spent time doing those things. The spirit moved again, and I was ready to sort of start a new business and was excited to do it again. And I think that's a nice, I had a tremendous opportunity there because it sort of refreshes you again. I'm able to go at it with a new excitement and enthusiasm, perhaps because I've let us recharge the batteries, you might say.
Hmm. Yeah, that's honestly very admirable. I feel like a lot of founders look at the process and look back at the process and say, gosh, this was so exhausting, but you seem to really, really enjoy like, the time that it takes and sort of, the aspects that go into the development of a business, which is really, really cool. Um, but I'm sure it wasn't always easy. And like you mentioned, there are ebbs and flows, and I'm sure that applies as well to the development of a venture. So I kind of want to hear from your time working on elite information groups or Chrome River Technology, or even Y Meadows right now. What were some of the memorable challenges that, those projects took you on? And then what did you do sort of in each situation, sort of turn around and keep moving forward?
So I think every early stage software or early stage company, the biggest challenge is always sales.
Mm,
Getting customers, keeping those customers happy, using those customers to get the next generation of customers. So a lot of my energy in all of these companies has gone to that part of the business.
mm,
And I always felt like it's a lot of talented people out there can build something cool, but to get it to market and get it in front of customers and get them excited about it, that's a real challenge. So for me, that's where a lot of my time and energy in all of these companies has gone. And I think that um, it's so much fun. You know, if it's you get to meet fantastic people, you have the ups and downs of winning and losing, but when you win, you
hmm.
feel great. When you lose, you feel lousy. But for me, it's that's part of what it takes to really build a company. As you get bigger and bigger, you can start bringing in other people who can do that, maybe focus some attention to the other aspects of the business. But that ability to sort of know your product intimately and go and sell it to people and talk about it, to me, that is core to the way I've built all three of these companies.
Mm. Do you find that those feelings of like elation when you get your first customer, you reach these milestones, does it still hold the same impact on you even though you've done it multiple times?
Absolutely.
Mm.
It's the it's the thrill. And the reverse is true too, It's like I go if I lose something, I go into my cave and I don't talk to anybody for a couple days. So
I bet your kids are like, "Oh, dad."
it's
He'll
more
get
my
over it.
wife. It's more my wife going, "Oh, don't talk to him for a couple days."
Mhm.
So, but but that to me, that's part of it. It's like, you know, what makes it so rewarding is it's not easy.
Mhm.
Lots of things in life aren't, but when you can succeed in those things, it makes it all the more rewarding.
Mm. Yeah, so true, so true. Um, so you kind of touched on this while you were answering my other question, but it's about part of a building a company is about bringing on the right people, about finding a good, solid team to join you on this journey. So how did you determine the right team members that you wanted to bring on for your previous ventures? I know today that includes members of your family. Uh, and so, yeah, what sorts of things do you look out for and how do you make those decisions?
I wish, that I could answer that with here's the formula to finding the
Mm,
right people. It's obviously that people are so complicated and so multidimensional that I haven't found the secret formula. Um, what I've found is that every, people are good at certain things and weak at other things. And instead of being constantly irritated at what they're weak at, just don't expect that and just compensate for it in other ways.
Mm.
So if I have a head of engineering maybe that's brilliant at engineering but isn't a good people person at managing his team, let's say, then don't get all frustrated and angry about that every day and then create conflict in the company. Just know that and compensate for it. Help manage his people in a different way. If you have a, head of sales that, um, is brilliant at, managing his people but isn't very good at talking to the product management team about what new capabilities the product needs, then don't try to get frustrated with that. Say, I need to get rid of that person, find the perfect person. Just compensate for it. So that to me is just the realization about how to work with people. And, a lot of my time in the company has always been spent sort of filling the holes. Here's what somebody else isn't good at. Maybe I can step in and help them with that.
Mm. Yeah, and I think definitely CEOs as they're managing like so many aspects of their business, like managing their relationships like with the people that they're working with is also super important, especially for the long term. Um, so kind of on that note then, I know the leaders of a company need to wear a lot of different hats. They're looking after so many different parts of their business and making decisions to lead the company. So how do you approach the role of being like a CEO and leading your company? How do you prioritize, what needs to be focused on in order to keep your business moving forward?
So I think at different stages, you focus on different things.
Hmm.
So um, let's say at a very early stage, I might be completely focused on directly working with customers and making sales,
Hmm.
building that core, foundation. At a
Hmm.
later time, I might be focused very heavily on talking to investors or trying to raise capital. Then the capital is raised and I can shift my attention and say, okay, well, now I'm really going to focus on, fixing our implementation organization or,
Hmm.
wherever area needs attention. And so I kind of look at the CEO role as I shouldn't have so many day-to-day obligations that I can't kind of move to leverage whatever part of the business needs focus right at that time.
Hmm.
Um, and I think personally I'm interested in all parts of the business. I'm interested in the sales, the finance, the technology. So it's fun for me to be able to do that and hopefully helps the company as well.
Hmm. Do you have any advice on how to make different aspects of the like business building process like interesting? Like let's say if a founder just, is really struggling to connect with their sales team and communicate with them, do you have any advice on how they should change their approach in order to facilitate that aspect of the business?
My advice would be, it's really easy to be critical of people
Mm.
till you try to do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the sales team's not succeeding at something, try it yourself, see if you could succeed at it. If you can succeed at it and they can't, then you have reason to be critical and maybe you learn something from it. But it creates a lot of, I think, antagonism when people feel like you're, you're critiquing them, but without having sort of been in their shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's the essential part of it. If you're, frustrated with your finance team, go make the collection calls yourself and see why the customers aren't paying. Or,
Mhm.
for each aspect of the business, I think, being able to step in, at least in these early stages, and be able to actually see what their challenges personally will make a big difference to your credibility.
Mhm. Yeah. I think that will definitely introduce a very humbling perspective, maybe
That's right.
for
That's
some founders.
exactly right.
100%. Um, but yeah, uh, that's some great advice, and I hope our founders listening will take that to heart, especially for their own ventures. I did want to spend some time also talking about, uh, the other aspect to being a founder, or CEO, and that's managing your life outside of your startup. Or for some founders, maybe your startup is your life and finding, other ways to maybe like stress relieve or, making time for your other interests. But any startup will take up a huge amount of time and commitment from the founder. And there are often other responsibilities that compete for that time. Like some founders have families, others are working a second job in order to support themselves. So I know you've mentioned, previously during this talk, you know, family is very important to you, and you recognize that, and you were able to set aside time to spend with your kids, and even to pursue some of your personal interests, which I find really, really cool. So how did you sort of achieve that work-life balance? Was it always there? Did you have to practice sort of maintaining that? Um,
Right.
yeah, sort of tell us a little bit about that.
Of course, you know, I may be biased if you would have to talk to my family to see if I've actually succeeded at that or not. Well, one thing is, and it's taught me an interesting lesson. So I'm a Orthodox Jew.
Mm,
So as a result, there's one day a week I don't work. So
mhm,
from Friday night sundown to Saturday night sundown, I don't work. And I realize now, so I'm able to not work during that time just because I treat that seriously. But
mhm,
many people think, oh, that'd be impossible to do. How could I
mhm,
not work at all for a whole day? But you realize when it's sort of a compelling thing on you, it is possible. It is absolutely, you're capable of just setting guidelines and following them. And if you have to do it, you will do it. So I have to do it maybe for my external, call it religious reasons, but other
mhm,
people who aren't could set those same guidelines and say, I'm just not going to work during these particular periods. And you can do that. And it'll somehow your work life will morph around it to make that a reality. So that's always my guide to people who are struggling with that, which is
mhm,
set yourself absolute rules. Say, Saturday morning from, 8 a.m. till 1 p.m., Sunday morning from, 9 to 2, I don't do any work. I
mhm,
don't look at emails. I don't check my phone. I don't do anything. And by setting those arbitrary rules, you're sort of forcing that self-discipline on yourself to be able to achieve the work-life balance. And I know it's possible, so it's just more an issue of self-discipline.
mhm, mhm. Why do you think so many individuals are unable to do that in the first place? Is it like is it a mentality thing? Do you think it's like a societal thing? What is the difficulty in having that sort of boundary set up?
I think it's a self-discipline
Mm,
problem.
mhm,
You keep checking your phone. You say that something needs to be done when it doesn't need to be done.
mhm,
It's there's just so many temptations
mhm,
to be distracted
mhm,
that, or maybe you consider sort of like the family time in a sense not less important, but less of a boundary.
mhm,
Um, you know, I think you have to treat it as that same absolute boundary, just as like, when I'm working on, Tuesday mornings between, 9 and 12, everybody knows, hey, I'm working, don't interrupt me. The same, and nobody would, and I wouldn't,
Hmm.
suddenly go off and do something else. The family time, the other time should have that same absoluteness to it.
Hmm. Right. That is so true. And yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think rest is something that's like completely underrated, especially nowadays. And that's like a lesson I'm trying to teach myself as well. So I really appreciate that perspective. Um, and so I do kind of want to get to know you a little bit better. And you've mentioned that you do pursue interests outside of like your startup work and your venture work. I'm just curious, if you want to share like what will you spend your other and like your free time on? And then uh, what you think the benefits of doing that is.
So some of that I've learned over time. I think like we've t talked a little bit about three dimensions, business, talked a little bit about family, maybe even a
Mm-hmm.
little bit about the spiritual aspect of life, which
Mm-hmm.
is, I think, important. But I think another very important part is your physical well-being.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a huge area that also people tend to neglect, and younger people particularly tend to neglect it, I think. Um, so as an example, I go every day, 6 days a week to Aikido, which
What
is
is that?
Aikido is one of the Japanese martial arts,
Oh.
and it's a chance I go to a dojo and we work, and it uses my brain, it uses my body. I come back tired and exhausted from it, and I know that how important that is to my physical well-being. Um, you know, and it doesn't have to be something like that. It could be, your tennis or pickleball or whatever, motivates you. I
Mm-hmm.
find like having it in a group thing, so I know that there's a group of people and we have a social aspect to it, and that starts at a particular time and ends at a time, so I have the discipline of having to be there, has been really helpful for me. But I'm a big believer in that, taking care of your health, and your that will help you in your mind in so many other ways as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the other dimension, since you asked for other things outside of work that I'm a believer in, is giving something back to the community.
Mm-hmm.
There's some element about entrepreneurship which is so focused sometimes on yourself and your business and everything else, that you fail to, feel like, oh, well, how am I trying to help my community in some way? So being involved in a nonprofit, or working on some venture that's outside of business to help other people. Or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes for entrepreneurs, it could just be even being on the board of another company, which is, in a sense, I find, particularly if it's a smaller company, it's a way to give back to them also. All of
Mm-hmm.
those are really nice ways. At the end, you feel like, well, it's not just about me, but I'm actually doing something to, help some other people in the world.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, and I think connectivity is like huge. Especially when, you can get so tunnel vision, like you mentioned, on your business. It's like, oh, you got to open up and you got to see, what you're working in the context, and the people around you, and who you're serving as well, with what you're working on.
I
But
found one of the
mhm.
things I found particularly challenging recently is, you know, at least my current business is a remote company,
Oh, is it fully remote?
fully remote.
Oh, wow.
So
Uh-huh.
I spend my whole day on, video conference calls all day
Oh.
long, So I
Mm-hmm.
really feel like for some of the other parts of life, it's important to physically be with people,
Mm-hmm.
and to have a community and get away from the screen for a few minutes and try that.
Oh yeah. I think I definitely relate with you there. I think during COVID, I like had my fill of isolation, and
Yeah,
so
right.
you don't realize how much you like need something or miss something until you lose it. And like I
Yeah,
think, you know, physical presence is one of those things I realize is so important
yeah.
as well. So yeah, I appreciate that. So we're reaching the end of our time here. And I have a couple more questions for you, and I want to make sure that we get to them before we got to hop off. Um, just some broader takeaways from our conversation, some last words. So, you've been an entrepreneur now for a very long time, and you've taken on different roles, I feel like, at companies. That have given you like experience and insight, and maybe even an opportunity to, like self-reflect on like characters of like leadership, of like, you know, what it takes to sort of build something and see it through. So what are some of the traits of an entrepreneur that you find most admirable, and what sort of traits do you then try to exemplify through, you know, your leadership, or maybe, you know, even as a father now that you're working with your sons on a venture?
Well, one of the things I've learned is that entrepreneurship, at least I have not been able to see a particular type of person that's good at it.
Mm,
And there's so many kinds of businesses. There's some businesses that, buy low, sell high, and that's all you need to do. There's some that are building unique intellectual property that are, there's so many different kinds of business, and as a result, so many different kinds of people that can be good at it. So I don't think there's a entrepreneur gene that you have to be successful. And if you don't have it, you're not going to be a successful entrepreneur. I think it's kind of finding that right match between who you are and the right kind of business for you.
mm,
And if you do that, there's so many different kinds of businesses, so many kind of different people, you'll find that right match to achieving it. Um, Personally, like I said, I love focusing on the sales side of the business and working with
mhm,
companies and working with people to get our product out there and get their feedback. And to me, that's so rewarding. It's like, and the process of building the company is equally rewarding because I've created so much, I guess, potential benefit for all the people who are working with us. So I've been able to look back and see the lives that have been changed by being part of Elite or Chrome River, and I'm really proud of what we were able to do.
mhm. That's awesome. And so, for as in summation, if you could boil down your years of experience, you know, the things that you've realized, what do you believe is the most essential thing that an entrepreneur or first-time founder needs to know as they begin their journey on building their startup? I know this is kind of a hard
That
question.
is a hard question. One is, I think, um, team up with some great advisors.
Mm,
Um, I have a lawyer that I work with for many, many years. I have infinite respect for him, and he's given me great advice as I've, created the business and moved it along. I've gone for, pricing advice to great advisors. So I believe having great advisors, you can't know everything. You just don't have the experience. Team up with people who are willing to advise you.
mhm.
Um, the the second thing is never. Now I'm going to give you a very personal belief. I
Okay.
believe
Mhm,
that people can see, in a sense, what you're thinking.
mm,
And they can kind of your little micro expressions, all the little things that you do, share with people kind of what's going on in your head. And you should not be thinking, I'm in this business to get rich.
mm,
If you think that, people will feel that vibe all the time and are turned off by it. What you need to be thinking about is I'm creating a great product that's going to really help my customers. And somehow, if I do that and I take care of them, something good will happen out at the end of it. But I'm not worried about that outcome in the end. I'm not worried about the exit. I'm not worried about going public or should I do this or should I do that. I'm just worried about building a great product. And if you don't totally internalize that and completely believe it in your heart, people will know. Your potential employees will know, your potential customers will know, and everybody will think, no, he's just out for himself on this. So
Mhm.
I think that getting that in your heart and totally believing it is the single most important thing you can do.
I love that. And I think that's so important. Um, so yeah, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing, more vulnerable bits about, your past experiences, and of course, some things that maybe founders find difficult to talk about, especially, in front of when they feel challenged to do so many things at once. Um, yeah, I'm really grateful that we got to have this talk, and that you're able to share this perspective. And I think that wraps up our time together. So, Alan, thank you so much again, for
Alexis, it
talking
was a
with me.
pleasure.
Yeah, and this was really
Enjoyed
great.
it.
To everyone listening, we'll see you for our next interview.